You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, it's me again, and you are listening to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. As luck would have it, I am Mighty Blue, and this is episode 295 of our show, as we steam into our 6th year as a podcast. We've been on a bit of a roll recently with a bunch of women hikers, and we've got another one today and next week. Our guest is Rebecca Brackbill, or Savage, and Rebecca recently completed her own through hike dream. Unfortunately, our conversation is a little bit marred by a cat, a dog, the dog walker, and a fridge. Nevertheless, we soldiered on bravely and got to the end. Rebecca will be on soon. With no Katie to fill the middle part of the show, I've got a conversation I had a couple of weeks back with a previous guest, JC Van Etten, or Kathmandu. He's been hiking our storm since he completed his through hike of the AT in 2019, and he wanted to share a few thoughts about the differences between the AT and the PCT, particularly with regard to the formation of tramlines or trail families. JC will be on after Rebecca. And then a real-life drama in Winton Porter's Passing Through, when a dog shows up at mountain crossings with a boot in his jaws. It's what's in the boot that sets off a chain of events. But first, it's Rebecca, and I'm afraid that we cut our chat a little short because she kept getting interrupted by a whole menagerie of animals and humans, as well as a fridge. Here's Rebecca Brackbill, or Savage. This week's guest is another newly minted Appalachian Trail through hiker. She is Rebecca Brackbill, or Savage. Hey, Rebecca, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And I normally like to cyberstalk my guests before having them on the show. Your Facebook intro really made me laugh this morning. You may not remember what it says, but it says, I just want to drink wine, take naps, and save animals. So what sends a boozing, sleeping animal lover to Amicalola Falls to hike the Appalachian Trail?
Well, it just became a dream of mine and a girlfriend from college, and we're just like, let's go do it. Let's go accomplish this crazy task that's been put forward of us. So,
but that can't be it. You just had you had this idea just to go and do it. Was it something that had been in your? Did you think about it as a kid, or was this something that had been on your bucket list for a while, or you just suddenly saw this goal there and decided to go for it?
I mean, once we talked about it, it was about sophomore year in college, I think it was. So, I mean, we didn't decide to officially set a date or a year to do it until we graduated. So I knew about it for a couple of years, and I decided to put it on my bucket list. And it became this, I don't know, just amazing adventure I could go do. And I don't know, the more I read about it, the more I learned about it, the more I was like, oh gosh, I have to go do this.
And having done it now, was it like you thought it would be?
Yes and no. Definitely had a lot more challenges than I thought. But it also had the great adventure and I don't know how to word it. I'm very good at this. It just had the challenge that you needed, I feel like, I guess.
Oh, right. You felt like you needed a challenge. Funny enough, yeah. I said to people in the past that if I'd known how difficult it was going to be, I'd never would have done it. And yet the crazy thing is I went ahead and did it again 5 years later, having said I would never hike again. So it's funny how the whole thing grabs a hold of you. And once it gets in your mind to do it, you really want to get it done, don't you? Oh,
yes. There was nothing stopping me at that point. Once I learned what it was, I was like, okay, it's happening.
And one more thing about your Facebook profile, by the way, it comes out quite a lot, is you do love to do those backbends, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And from what I saw, you did one at Katahdin itself, which was a very unusual summit picture, on the Cog Railway, actually on the Cog Railway.
Yes, I had to do it.
Mount Washington, and on Odie's school bus. Was that kind of your theme?
So I started it about somewhere in Vermont, and it just became a challenge for me to do. It was a way of working actually on my upper body strength because, we're working out our lower body.
Sure.
So the upper body's getting a little flabby. So I was like, okay, let's do this. And it just became a way of me of more entertaining and more challenge. I had to do it somewhere difficult, somewhere scenic. And then I was given the challenge of doing Odie's bus, and I couldn't turn that one down.
Oh, damn right. That's a great picture as well.
I was ecstatic to do that one. You
didn't try to do it actually on top of the brown sign at Katahdin, did you?
No, I did a different pose up there instead.
But you did it. Didn't you do a back bend at Katahdin, though?
Yes,
well?
I did it in front of the sign.
And with all those rocks, I think that must be in tough as well.
Yeah, the one kept moving under my hand a bit.
Now, you don't appear to either me now speaking to you now, and I can see the picture of you, but nobody else can. You don't appear to me to be particularly savage. So why were you given that as a trail name?
I didn't get it actually this year on my thru hike, but I did get it different trip on the AT with my girlfriend, my best friend from college. It began with a large knife and turning dry shampoo into a flame torch.
Whoa. There's a lot of things that don't correlate there. So tell me, how did that happen?
We wanted something to eat, so we stopped, and she had this big straight knife. So I was just sat there kind of in a squat position, I guess. And the way I was eating, she said, "You look so savage." And then that night, we really wanted a fire, and we tried paper, we tried lighter, we tried everything we could think of. And then she goes, "I have this dry shampoo." I was like, "Oh, I got this." So I lit it on fire. And I enjoyed it very much.
So savage you were.
Yeah.
There's something about fires on the trail. We don't talk about them much on the trail. Did you find yourself having many fires at night on the trail?
Whenever I could, I did, honestly. It was a great conversation, a great place to hang out. It turned into basically our television is what we called it on the trail. It was our TV.
Right. That's right, yeah. And men have traditionally always liked to look into fires. I think we're all mini arsonists at heart. We just love staring into fires and get people to stand back and we'll look after the fire.
Yeah.
So when you went out to the trail, what was the reaction of friends and family? I know that you and your husband have been only married for a couple of years when you went out there. Mm-hmm. How did you both deal with the separation from each other? Because it really is only a couple of years since you have been married, isn't it?
Yes. We hit 4 years this September.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you celebrated your anniversary on the trail?
Yeah, he wasn't the happiest about that, but we're going away this weekend to celebrate it, so. All
right. So what was his general reaction about you wanting to go?
I mean, honestly, he wasn't too happy about it at first, but he knew he couldn't stop me.
But did he know? You know, and you're right. You're right. Nobody should be able to stop anybody else from fulfilling their dream. At the same time, there are practical considerations, aren't there?
Yeah.
So did he know when he first met you, when he married you, this was something you wanted to do?
I think it was mentioned, but I don't think it was set in motion at that point. It's hard to remember.
He didn't think you were serious, did he?
I don't think so. I mean, with my bad knees and everything else, he's like, "Are you really going to do it? You know, you're going to wait for this long of a time." But he knew he couldn't stop me, and he was all supportive for it. He was great.
Oh, once you said you were going to go, that was it, and then and he said, "Yeah, I'm right behind you." That's cool. Did he come out and meet you on the trail?
He did quite a few times, actually. About maybe 5. I'm not sure.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's good.
He slack packed me a bunch when I came through Pennsylvania. So yeah, he did some hikes and supported me along the way.
Cool. And what about the rest of your family? Were they behind you mostly?
Yes, my parents did some trail magic as well in Pennsylvania. Kept cheering me on, saying, "We want to see pictures. Where are you at?" So.
I mean, you're pretty confident you could do it?
50-50 at that time. I mean,
I always think it's an unrealistic expectation to think you're going to do it anyway. Especially after, I always remember back, I think the first 3 days, or not Blood Mountain, Neil's Gap, just after Blood Mountain. You think to yourself, that seemed exhausting. And I've got to do that about another 100 times.
It was, and it was my first rainstorm. And my poncho tore. So I was soaking wet, but I just started singing out loud and making the best of it.
Nothing wrong with that. Yep. And what 2021 is always going to be your year. Always think about this year as the time you did it. You're one of the many people who had intended for 2020 to be your year. What were your plans for 2020?
So my best friend from college and I made a date. Was it March 30th, I believe, to head out. We had quit our jobs. We were all set to go. We had our rides and everything else. But then COVID hit, unfortunately. So we had to cancel it.
So how was she and I know you went this year. She didn't come this year with you, did she?
No, in fact, unfortunately, Packmill was not able to come with me.
Because for many people, they'd arranged their lives to take that one shot at the trail. So I suppose it was the same for her. And so loads were done then. How were you able to prepare for the trip last year, get your life in order and head out, and then have that dashed? What did that feel like for you?
I was very anxious and very excited for it. I had saved up all the money for the trails. I worked 3 jobs to do so.
Wow.
To pay for my school loans while I was gone and to pay for all my gear and everything else.
What 3 jobs were you doing? What were you doing?
I worked at a pet store, I did pet sitting, and I did a bagel shop.
A bagel shop. Okay.
Yes.
So how'd you get the hours to do all those things? So you're working about 16-hour days, were you?
Probably.
Oh, my God. So you were able to get rid of those, as it were. So
Yeah.
once you came back home, did you think you'd still be able to go?
There was a lot of doubt, actually. There was concern. People were saying, oh, you should just skip it. Just stay home. Just keep working. And I did think about it. I did. But I said, this is one dream I can't let go.
Yeah. So you were able to carry on working. Did you get those 3 jobs back?
I did. They looked at me like, yes, we'd love to have you come back.
Wow, that's interesting. So you got back to your 3 jobs and you were able to put it on hold, and then you quit them again this year.
I did.
So did they think you weren't serious this year?
They kept trying to get me to stay, that's for sure.
All right.
That's for sure.
But your husband, once again, was pretty supportive for you to go again this year.
Yes, he was.
I bet you must have had some great conversations. And you said you'd hiked before. How radical was the change to your gear once you'd established that you were going to go on a 6-month hike? Because day hikes, and I don't think you've been away for much longer than a couple of days before. Is that right?
I think the longest was about a week.
Right. So tell us about your process for planning your gear.
I just went a bunch of different hikes. The longest was the week one, I think. And I just tested out my gear, see what I had, see what I didn't need, which was a lot. I was, how can I lighten my load? Because I think my first weekend hike, my pack was 40 pounds.
Oh my gosh. Would you take your husband with you?
No, I didn't. I did it all myself.
I mean, in your pack.
I was able to carry it, but I was like, there's no way I'm taking this for 6 months.
So what were you taking then? What were you taking in a 40-pound pack? And I know, by the way, because I took a 42-pound pack first time. So actually, on my first trip on the AT, it was a 42 pounds.
Oh gosh,
fully loaded. Yeah. So what do you have in there?
I think mostly it was clothes. I don't know honestly what junk I had. I think just the biggest was food and clothes at the time.
And how did you rationalize that? So you do the hike. I think pretty quickly you learn what you need and what you don't need, don't you?
Definitely.
And I know that, I found, I think I came home after about 3 months the first time, and I got rid of stuff I hadn't used once, which kind of gives you a clue you didn't really need it, I guess, at the time. How did you, because you went in March, so it's still pretty cold weather. How did you mix up your cold and warmer weather stuff?
I tried to make sure I could layer whatever I had, so it was multi-purpose to save some weight. I had a base layer, my pants, but I had my long sleeve shirt. It wasn't a fleece, but it was a mid layer, and then my puffy. And thankfully with all that, I was okay. And then if I got too hot, I could switch it out. But that definitely saved me a lot of weight, being able to layer it, not having extremely heavy gear overall.
Yeah. Well, I had 3 hats, by the way. Just so
oh gosh,
one was a sun hat, one was a beanie hat, I think, and the other one was just a bandana, which I kept. And how did your gear work out? I think you told me last time, unless I misunderstood you, you said that your pad was leaking.
Yes, my sleeping pad. Oh, I love that one so much. That was about the time that I was actually switching out some of my gear for warmer weather slowly. So when I was in Virginia during the Triple Crown there, I actually got sick. So I had to come home for a short time. And when I came home, I ended up switching out some of my gear and I got a different pad. So I still have my old pad because it's a very slow leak and I really, really like it.
You can repair it, don't you? You can repair it.
I think it's leaking through the material itself, not
oh
like
my
a
gosh,
valve.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I've had it for about 2 years. So they said it's probably just that and it's just old, but I love it.
And you you said you were researching. You told me before became quite a gearhead. How did you research?
I did.
What were you doing?
I just looked up Appalachian Trail and through hiker, different kind of gear, and I just kept reading and reading. And I was reviews, every item about how much weight, multi-purpose, how well did it work for this person, how about that person. And then
it's a process, isn't it, though? And in many ways, people can overthink it, don't you think?
I probably did a little bit myself personally.
Right,
but I did enjoy it, though.
Oh, really? And so whose advice do you take most of? Is there a noise going on next to you? What's that?
Sorry, it's my cat.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I understand the concept.
I'm trying to shoo her away.
I got one here as well, yeah. So you looked at Hyperlite, but you weren't too impressed with that?
I really liked the way it fit me, but the waterproofing did not hold up very well due to a lot of my seams coming undone. Right. And at that point, my pack was definitely no more than 30 pounds. Most of the time, actually, was the max of 25 at that point. So I just had a trash bag liner inside to help me get through it. But I'm hoping I can send it back to Hyperlite and get some repairs done. Because I do like the bag, but the waterproofing was an issue.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. You know, these companies always like to know where things have gone wrong because they want to try to fix things in the future. So I'm sure that will work for you. And I know that you've suffered from bad knees over your life. How were you able to manage that? Because as we all know, the AT is really not kind on knees.
No, not at all.
So what was your issue and how did you manage it?
So the tendons in my knees are bad and my kneecaps like to shift all the time.
Oh my God.
So I put on patella bands and I had KT tape on every single day.
Please explain that. What do you mean they'd like to shift?
They just move in the socket a little bit back and forth.
Ooh, that doesn't sound good at all. Is that a hereditary thing or is it something that's developed over years or what?
It's hereditary for sure. Yes.
All right.
Unfortunately, it's my father's fault. Though I love him to death. It comes from his side of the family.
He's going to love that, yeah. Yep. Blame your dad, quite right too.
Hey, he had surgery too. We all did, all of his sisters.
Right. So you've had surgery and you're quite a young woman, so you're only in your early 20s. So how many surgeries have you had so far on your knees?
So far I've only had one on each,
right.
But there is definitely talk of future procedures. So I was kind of like, well, if I kind of mess them up some more, I'm already getting surgery. So
good attitude. That's a pretty good attitude. But do they give you a lot of pain throughout the whole hike?
Oh yes, very much so. My sister's actually a PTA, so she gave me some advice here and there about how to stretch, how to work them out a little bit, how to support them with the KT tape.
So given your knee problems, did the pain ever rise to the level where you actually thought it might stop your hike, or did you just manage your way through ibuprofen and stuff like that?
Yes, actually. So only about when I got to Albert Mountain, I went to a PTA, and they looked at my IT.
Is this the cat still? Cat still making a noise? Is the cat still making a noise?
That was my dog. So sorry. There's so many animals.
Yeah, carry on.
So I went to PTA and they looked at me and they said, "What are you doing? Why are you hiking? You probably should get off." I said, that's not happening. I said, "How do I manage it? How do I manage the pain?" So they gave me some more stretches, told me exercises to do before and after I hiked. So I just was constantly doing that. That's how I got through.
So at the end of every day and before every day, you do these exercises which would try to strengthen your knee. Is that right?
Yep, and how to stretch out my muscles so they wouldn't because they would get so tight, specifically my IT band, they would get so tight, it just caused so much knee pain. It would shoot down to below my knee. So. Jeez.
So you never thought of quitting because of your knees, but
No.
When we spoke previously, you told me that there was one time you really did consider quitting, and it was in the most unlikely place to consider quitting, probably the easiest part of the trial. Tell everybody how on earth you thought, I'm going to quit in Shenandoah. Nobody's ever quit in Shenandoah.
I just got into the funk, I guess, because it was in Virginia. I don't know if you want to call it the Virginia blues. I don't know. I was down in the dumps. I was bored. I wasn't having fun. There's no views. But also my good friend So we just like, you know what? Let's take it easy. Let's just do 10-mile days. Let's just have some fun. So she got me through that. And once I got out of there, I was like, okay, that's done. Let's get to the halfway point.
So you carried on. I've heard this before, Virginia Blues. It's a well-known expression. I always think it's just the fact that you're not making progress. You're not getting through states because it takes you a month and a half or 2 months, whatever it is, to get through Virginia. But you say no views. I think the views are great in Virginia. I think Pennsylvania there's one that lacks views.
No, I meant the views in the Shenandoahs. Like when you're hiking through, you don't get too many views.
Oh, no. Yeah, the Shenandoahs are pretty quiet. Yeah,
so I did some more road
Did you see any
walking.
animals? Did you see any bears in there, though?
No bear my whole entire trip. No bears.
I only saw one. When I went in 2019, I only saw one. So you said, let's get on, and you decided to get to the halfway point. And had you made up your mind straight away to carry on going? Were you starting to have fun by then?
Yes, I was. So I didn't have my mind made up exactly. I told myself, though, get yourself to the halfway point, reevaluate, and go from there. I said, you know what? I'll probably be moving forward. I'll probably be in a better mood. I want to finish this. I kept going, what would happen if I quit? What would happen if I finished? So that definitely was going through my mind a lot. No, it was a difficult choice.
Did your dog just open and close the door? Oh, no, that's your husband.
No, my friend's walking my dog for me.
I said, that is one clever dog to open and close the door.
My friend's walking her for me because she gets pretty barky. So I'm trying to keep her busy up there.
Right. So you weren't actually enjoying it. So had this been something that had been going on for a while, or did you suddenly come to the conclusion at this period of time that Shenandoahs wasn't working for you?
I think it was the Shenandoahs. I mean, I was excited going into them because actually last year I had a minor meniscus tear in my knee. So I was like, okay, this time go to the Shenandoahs, I'll be in better shape. I'll be okay. So I was excited to get past where I stopped before. But I wasn't having fun. I was bored. I just was blah. Yeah.
Well, in that case, that is a good reason to finish. And a lot of people do that. You know, this is not for everybody because it's hard work anyway. You had the added problem of having your knees as well. And having lost your hiking partner in 2020, when you set out, were you looking for a partner going forward, or were you prepared to let the hike unfold and see if it gave you a tramley or you became part of a tramley? What were you looking to do?
Before I started the hike this year, I was looking to have somebody hike with me somewhat. Again, mostly my father was pushing that. He didn't want his daughter hiking alone. But I honestly was okay hiking alone. And then finding a tramley or a group of friends to hike with along the way, which I did.
Yeah. And did you ever feel threatened on the trail? Or did you feel quite comfortable? Because, you know, a woman on the trail has to be aware of herself, as she does it wherever she is, I'm sure.
Yeah. There was only one instance, this guy creeped me out a little bit, but I wasn't concerned, honestly. Plus, my name is Savage, so it kind of helped out a little bit.
Yes.
I tell people my name, they go,
your friend's long...
Savage? Oh.
Yeah. You should have taken your friend's long knife with you. That would have done it, I'm sure.
I did have my knife.
And you did actually summit with a guy called Man Scout, but you actually hiked quite a ways with him, didn't you? So tell us about Man Scout and how you started hiking with him. Is it the same pace thing, or you just got on well?
So Man Scout and I met about day 4, actually, on the trail. And we hiked till I got injured about at Upper Mountain. And then we didn't see each other for a long time. Then it was on and off seeing each other. And then about Pennsylvania and on, we hiked together for the trail. We just became good friends. Could hike the same miles. So, yeah. Yeah,
I think your own... We've talked about this a lot of times in the past about how people tend to hike with somebody and then they find themselves hiking the other person's hike. But when you find somebody who hikes the same sort of pace as you, that works fine, doesn't it? I think when you see somebody really pushing themselves to keep up with somebody else, that becomes the issue.
Yeah, at first I had a little harder time because he's a very tall guy, so he's a long stride. But we could get the same miles done in the amount of day, no problem. It wasn't, I could walk quite as fast. It was, I could do the miles. So. Yeah.
And you summited with him, didn't you?
Yes.
Tell us about your summit day, because that's such a personal thing and it happens to everybody, and yet we all experience it differently. What was it like for you to be summiting?
It was so surreal. I couldn't believe I was finally there after all my knee pain, after everything I'd been through in the trip. was a long 6 months, but it was, I mean, you could see it all day. It was a gorgeous day I had. It was absolutely gorgeous. Perfect weather, not a cloud in the sky.
Yeah, I saw from your picture, yes. From your picture, it looked great, yeah.
I could see it the whole way up. Right in the middle, you could see the flashing of people's lights right where the sign would be. So I was like, oh my gosh, yes. It's right there. I can see it. It's coming up. It's here. I would have stayed up there all day if I could have.
So what was it like touching the sign? How'd that feel?
It was amazing. At first, I just stared at the sign. I was like, okay, there it is. All right, I'm going to touch it. It just became real. It was the moment. It was just what I've been working for, hiking towards every day. And I hugged it then. I have this goofy picture of me laughing and smiling while I'm hugging it. I just was, oh my gosh, it's here. So.
Oh, there's the dog again.
Yep. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So you finished, and do you miss the trail, by the way?
I do. I really do. I miss hiking every day. I would hike more at home currently, but let my knees heal a little bit. Hopefully I'll be getting hiking soon, but.
Yeah. So you must have had time now. You've been back about a month, I think it is, just under a month. What do you think the trail has given you?
It's definitely made me a stronger of a person. It's, I had to deal with a lot of rain, freezing cold, which I hate. I absolutely hate the cold. So I embraced it a lot more. I sucked it up. So, okay, it's going to be okay. I'll deal with it. So I feel like I can carry that at home as well. Strong of a person. And if something happens, just deal with it. Let's see what happens. It'll be okay.
And how have you felt since you've been back? I know you say you missed the trail. Have you started to get down about it, or are you just now going forward with whatever's next in your life?
At first, I was down in the dumps for a while. Actually, the first week was hard. Definitely. I couldn't sleep. I don't know if it was going from a tent every night to a bed. It was not comfortable. But now I think I'm doing really good. I'm back into my canning, working, playing with my animals. So it's been good now. And I'm excited for my next adventure.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Was this a one and done, or are you now open to more trails? And what does your husband think about that?
He's like, no, not anytime soon. But actually, what I'm hoping to do next is Mount Kilimanjaro.
Wow. Well, why that?
Why not? It is a new adventure. It is someplace I've never been. So someplace I can go and seek and enjoy. And my husband will go along with me to Africa. He probably won't hike it, but he'll probably come with me to Africa. So that's someplace we can do somewhat of it together.
Yeah, and it's not 6 months away from home, which is quite an important thing as well.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to let you get on. I'm going to leave you now to get on with your dog. I appreciate you coming on the show, and congratulations for doing this, because I know how difficult it is, and to do it with bum knees, that must be really, really tough. So I admire you immensely for doing it. So thanks for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll speak again sometime.
Yeah,
you tell us about your Kilimanjaro hike, in fact.
Okay, will do.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.
I felt sorry for Rebecca there. Everything was coming in and out where she was recording, but I think we got the gist of her adventures this year. By the way, that summit photo was another on one of those glorious Maine sunny days. They don't happen all the time, but when they do, man, they are spectacular. Now, as I said earlier, we've lost Katie for a while, and we'll be picking back up with her next year once she returns to complete her AT journey. In the meantime, I'm open to ideas for this middle section. I've had a few thoughts myself, but I'd be grateful for ideas that you might like to suggest. Remember, you can email me at steve@hikingradionetwork.com, or even use the microphone button on our Hiking Radio Network website to leave a recorded message to me. I may even play it out on the air. In the meantime, though, here's JC Van Etten, or Kathmandu. Well, I'm back on with a old friend of the show. Actually, not that old a friend of the show. He was on pretty recently. This is Kathmandu. How are you?
Very good, Mighty Blue. How you doing?
And I'm doing good. And I'm speaking to you because you reached out to me. I think it was only yesterday or maybe the day before. You've been on the PCT, and I've been following that journey. First off, how did that go? Did you enjoy it?
I loved it, but it ended way too fast. I started at Harts Pass and Sobo in 1st of July, hit Canada border, did all of Washington State, all of Oregon. I got down to the California-Oregon border at Syed Valley, where I learned that the fire closure would be 577 miles. And
Wow.
I was going to hike the areas in between, depending on the air quality index, and I didn't have to make any decisions. They did it for me. So I hitchhiked to Oregon, and I did the whole northern section of the California Coast Trail. Got back on the Sierras, did about 110 miles to Ptolemy Meadows to find out that California Forester closed all the national forests from that point all the way south to Mexico. Initially for 17 days. So I wasn't going to wait around. I already felt I missed enough of NorCal to not really, in my heart, call it a through hike. I knew if I came back and did northbound in the spring, I could make it a through hike within a calendar year and miss the least amount of trail.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So how close did you get to actual fires?
I never saw fire. I saw a lot of smoke in mid to southern Oregon. I wore my N95 mask maybe 2 days hiking on the trail.
Wow.
So
I tried to do the John Muir Trail myself and failed for the third time. Nightmare. but when we landed in Reno, apparently there was a fire 50 miles away.
Yeah,
and there was only 1.5 mile visibility.
Mm-hmm.
The smoke was that bad. So it must have been horrendous out there. So it's lovely to see some snow out there at last and cooler temperatures. And the reason we're really talking today is about. You made a couple of points in a note you sent me. You said you were thinking about the AT
right.
and how different the tramley dynamics changed in contrast to the PCT. And I know that you had probably one of the most remarkable tramleys on the AT I think I've heard of. You were just so all in tune with each other. So where did that statement come from? And talk about those different dynamics.
Sure. So... And going back to the AT, I did have a really great tramley. We had great chemistry. We still are in contact with each other. Last night we were texting back and forth. And that's since, 2019. We've hiked smaller hikes together. We had a great dynamic. The thing I liked was that we would encourage and we would push and we would challenge ourselves as a group. And I really liked that. And going forth on other hikes, you always wonder, am I ever going to have that connection again? I did the Benton Mackay this spring, just did 100 miles with one of my tramley members, and he unfortunately took ill. So then I finished a long trail up before the PCT going southbound, and in 100 miles, I saw one other hiker.
Wow.
So, So I was.
What do you put that down to? Were you going faster, or did you do it at the wrong time, or what was that like?
I did it early, so I did it probably very early May, where normally it would be cold and maybe snowy. This year, not so much. It was 80 degrees, no mud in Vermont at all, no bugs. It was amazing, and it was just something. At that point, there was only one other Nobo. So it's that early in the season, but it was a great experience, and I really was wondering how I was going to do by myself, not having somebody to interact with, and it was great. I loved it, and I did it that way because the PCT going southbound, I was told that there's not a lot of interaction, but I guess that's on a normal year, and I did not have a normal year, so I ended up when I started the PCT. Washington State, their snowfall from the year before was 150% above normal. And when I drew my permit, there was 120 inches in Harts Pass. So nervously from Florida, I'm watching snow fall. And the week before, it was down to 0. So I was pretty excited. I got up there, flew to Seattle, got a lift to Harts Pass. And I only really navigated about 40 miles of snow on the trail, but it created a bubble. So there were a lot of people. I started out.
How slow did it make you then?
It didn't. Second day I did 26.6 miles.
Wow,
so
man,
it didn't slow us down at all. I don't think. There were days where you lost the trail because the snow was deep, but I don't think it really slowed us down. I was doing 20s at the very least 20s for the longest time until I broke out and did 30s. So
you ended up in a tramley, I presume.
I ended up in a tramley, and it was funny because we had a trail angel bring us from Marysville up to the trailhead, and there were two other guys. One, his name is Salty, he's a triple crowner, and he invited me instantly to hike with him because I was the one with experience. But he was doing 30-mile days to start with, and I said, "No, thank you. You're going to break me." So the other guy was who we named Num Num. He's a South Korean Canadian, a real nice guy with limited experience. And I told him, hey, I'm going to do what my body allows me to. You're more than welcome to stay with me. And against all odds, he kept up with me. And I was amazed at that. And we ended up hiking almost all the way to California before he got off trail. And so the second day we gained another person in our tramway, which we named Guinness. And him and I hiked all the way to Sonora Pass together. And it was interesting because, us mature guys, we typically are the oldest in our group. But, it doesn't have any bearing on how well we do or how slow or how fast we are. And typically, I led the group. I was the last one out of camp. I'd pass everybody by the time they're eating breakfast, and at the end of the day, they'd catch up. My tent was set up, and I was making dinner. Age really didn't factor in. And as we got to know the other Sobos, we got a nickname, and it was called the Catman Crew. And we added to that. We added another guy, Free for All, in Stehekin. So it was the four of us. And really where it differed was on the AT, I was kind of middle of the pack with our tramway. I was never the first one to camp, never the last one to camp. But by the time I got to camp, like the folks I hiked with kind of had to plan for the next day. And at first it kind of struck me because they're like, what do you think? We're going to do 25 tomorrow. And I'm like, I haven't even set my tent up. I have to process this. And how do I feel and how am I going to feel tomorrow? And whereas I became that person on the PCT. So by the time the guys got to camp, I already pre-scouted water for the next day, looked at the terrain, looked at.
Oh, how interesting. How interesting.
So kind of the tables turn. So that was a different perspective, but I tried to be just like my tramley was really open with, what do you guys think? I mean, if it's too much, let me know. And then on top of that, I had specific goals. One of them was in Washington State. I wanted to do 30s in the Northern Cascades because everybody said it's nearly impossible if you're going southbound to do 30s. You don't have your trail legs. I came onto the trail with 350 miles prior this spring backpacking, and I never stopped training, so it wasn't a problem. But I would serve it up to the guys. I think tomorrow I'm going to do a 30. You're more than welcome. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. I'll wait for you. I'll catch up at my camp, and then we'll go from there. Guinness loved it. He didn't have any goal set, but he loved the challenge, so he was right along with me. And oddly enough, so were the other guys. So we did. Our first big day was 32 and a half miles, pretty much right in the middle of the Northern Cascades.
Oh, God. I personally wouldn't enjoy that myself because I wouldn't be able to do it. But you actually, when you sent your note to me, you said you liked the conversation I had with Phoenix about traveling and whose hike you hiking. So did it seem to you that they were hiking your hike, even though they started talking about it first?
Yeah, they were. But I always gave them an out. I said, hey, guys, this is my goal. My goals don't have to be your goals. And I'll wait for you, but Guinness, he liked the challenge. So, and quite often we would talk about it and reluctantly Num Num would be like, well, okay, I'll get there. And, a few times we felt bad. So we really made sure we cheered him in when he came to camp. So he felt special. He made it.
And you actually also say that you felt you learned a great deal on the PCT that could benefit future hikers. Is that future hikers of the PCT or the AT?
Future hikers of both, actually. I mean, so I met at least 30 class of 2019 AT hikers.
You said that. That's amazing.
Union. It was awesome. And a lot of the people I didn't know, but I knew through maybe your podcast or I knew through other social media outlets. So that was really cool. I no sooner got to Hearts Pass and signed in a book, and I ran into three hikers, Spud's bunkhouse and Spud's sister, who was just doing a section hike. And the first thing they said is, what's your name? And I said, Kathmandu. And they're like, no kidding. We had summited Katahdin the day before we did in 2019.
Right,
so they
nice.
knew some of my family members. So there was an instant connection there. And we ended up hiking together all the way through till they both got off. And then they went to Colorado and hiked Colorado Trail. And once that closed, everybody dispersed. It was sad. It was sad.
So what are the things that you think you learned then, having spent time with those hikers and having now done a different trail? It's definitely a different trail, isn't it? I mean, incredibly different. So tell us, what were those lessons you think you learned you might be able to share with people?
Sure. The one thing, I was really thinking about hiking this trail was the physicality of it is nowhere near the AT. The AT is a hard trail. The PCT is no walk in the park, but I'll tell you what, if you're just getting started, it would be a great trail to start with because it's very gentle. I never had a hiker hobble. I never had any physical issues. Nothing was ever sore than it needed to be.
Yeah, but you stayed super fit. I've seen you on Facebook. You've stayed super fit since you finished the AT. So you didn't, like me, allow yourself to grow about 70 or 80 pounds.
Yeah, but it seemed like so a lot of the hikers that I hiked with and around, they didn't come to the trail with that kind of physical condition, and they did get their tails kicked, but it was a shorter period, and they adapted very quickly. Whereas I think on the AT, a lot of people tap out, so I didn't see that on the PCT. People hung in there and they stayed there. Also southbound, it's sort of like starting at the 100-mile wilderness and it doesn't end. One of my family members that, you have that mentality going in a 100-mile wilderness. How long is it going to take me to go through? But the PCT really, in reality, is just a series of 100-mile wilderness. You start out with 130 miles, and there's really no way to logistically easily to get off the trail and get to a town. So did you enjoy the wilderness aspect of it? Because I know I enjoyed the 100-mile wilderness in 2019 a lot. Yeah. But did you enjoy the wilderness of it? I really did. It's sort of like the northern section of the long trail. There's nothing there. It's just you in the woods. And I really love that. You get comfortable with that. And, you have a long-term outlook on, where you're going and how you're getting there. So the social component isn't there like the AT, and I really enjoyed that. But it's a different trail. And, it's a good one to start out with because I think it's a lot easier on your body. The weather is pretty decent, at least, for me going Sobo.
But how would the weather be? You probably researched it, and I haven't researched it. How would the weather be for a Sobo starting in July? How would it be in the south? Quite apart from all the fires.
Well, yes. Kind of the other part of the question there to answer what I can do to help somebody in the future with the PCT is kind of a strategy, because with the way the climate is and the way the wildfires are, and the window for a Sobo is very, very small. Right. We didn't start seeing a lot of Nobos until about southern Oregon, mid to southern Oregon. So if you're going north, you have to deal with the Sierras with heavy snow load and river crossings. If you go south, you have river crossings, possibly some snow, but you run into fires. And I knew I would run into fires, but not to the degree of what we had this year. And I think it's going to worsen every year from everything I've read and seen. What I did is I finally met up with the Wander Women.
Did you?
Yeah, they were behind me on the AT, and I was excited to know they were doing a PCT this year, and they'll be triple crowners probably in a month.
Awesome.
So they had a great strategy. They were supposed to start at Hearts Pass, but they decided to start at NorCal, so at like Belden, Bernie, and they hiked north from there all the way up to Washington, tagged it, flew back to Tahoe, got back on the trail, and then they were going south. I think in a normal year, that is a really solid strategy because you skip over the fire-prone areas.
Problem is though, JC, is that it's difficult to see how this is going to be doable going forward, isn't it? The way things are right now.
I think either direction is going to be a major challenge because a lot of the NOBOs that we passed, they missed 577 miles in NorCal or at least 400. And, I can't, and for me, again, it's me personally, I can't miss that much trail and feel like I've hiked it.
No.
And logistically to go back and try to fill in those blanks. One thing people don't know, or it's not really well publicized, is that if they close a section that's 100 or 200 miles, that might not open for 2 or 3 years. Think, it's just closed this year because it's burning, but they'll let it go for a couple of years. We went up.
Didn't realize that.
Yeah, we went up Eagle Creek Pass, and that had been closed for 3 years. So, and it's just, it was such an amazing area. You go under the waterfalls, and it's just gorgeous. But to think the last 3 years of PCT hikers weren't able to experience it, that's a shame.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I think this is going to get worse and worse, not better and better, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think so.
But you're not done for the year yet either, are you? No. You're going out again, aren't you?
Yeah, the mountains are cold.
Your wife must be pleased to have you home at the moment just for a couple of days.
Yeah, she is. But she also knows, I need the mountains. I need to do this. So, and because I hike fairly fast, it's only going to be a couple weeks. So
that's cool.
It's not so bad.
Yeah. And you're going back to the Benton Mackay, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going back to the Benton Mackay. I left off just across the Tennessee border by Ducktown in Tennessee. So I'm going to rejoin that and hike all the way to Newfound Gap. So
nice.
Yeah,
very nice.
Actually,
indeed.
Beyond Newfound Gap towards Standing Bear. So that's
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, man. Well, look, it's lovely to talk to you again, and it's catch you one of your few times at home. And we're going to do a longer show, I think, one day. I think we need to catch up with all your hiking because you've done quite a lot, and it's been good to talk to you again. Okay.
Yeah, good talking to you, Mighty Blue. Take care.
Okay, man.
All
Take
right.
it easy.
Yep. Bye.
Always great to hear from past guests, and JC has become quite the hiker, hasn't he? I love the way he threw in a casual 30-mile day. I don't even like driving 30 miles. Mind you, I love how he referred to the PCT as a series of 100-mile wildernesses. It's quite an image for me, and given how much I enjoy the AT's 100-mile wilderness, and I guess it gives you some perspective of what the PCT is like. Thanks this week go to our supporters who donate to the shows. This week I'd like to thank monthly donors Anne Hinton, Anne Dobson, Terry Hackler, Mike Gicello, Jenny Grunke. Thanks to all of you. And thanks also to William Matthews for his donation this month. You know where to go if you'd like to see our shows continue. Head on over to our website at hikingradionetwork.com and click on one of the donate buttons there. And while you're there, check out our other 5 shows to see if you'd like to listen to one of those. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to be having another one up and running. We'll be hearing about that show next week. And talking of thank yous, thanks so much to those of you who supported my birthday fundraiser for Parenting Matters, a local parenting education organisation on whose board I serve. I didn't say anything on the show about it last week, but because I turned 69 last Friday, I thought I'd try to raise $1,000 through Facebook. Happily, we went past that target yesterday. It's still open for a few more days, so if you want, head on over and help us continue our mission to help families improve the outcomes for their children. I'll have the link in the show notes. Finally today, in Winton Porter's passing through, a gruesome discovery at mountain crossings when a boot turns up in the jaws of a dog. I'll see you next week. Chapter 12. The Foot. It's not just the shade and seclusion of the woods that makes the Southern Appalachians a natural refuge for outlaws. It's something deep in the character of the local people, the rural distrustfulness of big government in general, and of cops, judges and lawyers in particular, that runs in their blood. For the man on the run, getting help and sympathy in these woods is a question of marketing. If he can bill himself as a modern Robin Hood, an underdog-free spirit battling the corrupt, overreaching forces of taxation, he'll find some friends out here. The most famous and most lovable outlaws were the legends of the bootlegging business. While mythical moonshine runners were memorialised in Thunder Road, Deliverance and the Dukes of Hazzard, the real ones, including Junior Johnson of NASCAR fame, hid in these mountains for years, distributing tax-free liquor and teaching people how to drive like maniacs. Today, the right phone call can still turn up a little white lightning for a special occasion, but the old rivers of moonshine have mostly dried up, and the fugitives aren't what they used to be either. The most notorious of recent years was the terrorist Eric Robert Rudolph, who bombed Atlanta's Olympic Park during the 1996 Olympics. He later went into hiding in the western North Carolina, and possibly North Georgia, woods after he bombed a gay bar in Atlanta and abortion clinics in Georgia and Alabama. He had killed 2 people and injured more than 120 when, in 1998, the FBI put him on its 10 most wanted list and tracked him into the woods. When I came to Mountain Crossings in 2001, Rudolph was still on the loose. Whenever his apparent trail passed close to our nearby town of Blairsville, the pack of FBI agents who followed it would come to the store and try to get information from the hikers. The FBI men, well-dressed, clean-shaven and smartly equipped, stuck out like Oreos in orange juice, and they didn't like us. They thought we were Rudolph's friends. Now, there was a small and loud super redneck minority in the area that actually supported Rudolph's vague crusade against abortion, homosexuality and globalization. He was a white supremacist too, just for good measure. Somebody without much in the way of conscience made a few bucks selling Run Rudolph Run t-shirts. The press, meanwhile, loved telling the story of the savage natives protecting one of their own from the FBI. Once it was reported that Rudolph had come through Mountain Crossings and had even stopped in to get a canned drink and a chocolate bar. We could not confirm or deny that the man had come to our store. He would have been a thin white man with a shaggy beard, covered in dirt and smelling awful, like half the customers in the store. One reporter wanted to know if I could show her some of the bugs I thought he was eating, and another wanted to know if I thought Rudolph really had a chance against all the wild animals, such as bears, cougars and coyotes. I told her I was afraid he did have a chance against Georgia's cougars. Most of us wanted to help, certainly in educating reporters about how many decades it had been since anyone had seen a wild cougar in North Georgia. We just didn't know anything. There was a very simple reason we didn't know anything. The woods are big and the trail is small. But we had trouble explaining this to the FBI. They were city men who thought of the size of a place in terms of population rather than square miles, and they kept expecting to find him under somebody's bed, even when all a citizen had to do to get $1 million reward was to give information that would lead to Rudolph's arrest. I took a shot at that reward. I gave an agent some tips on blending in with the hiking community. Grow a beard, wear less black, smoke some grass, put a few bumper stickers on the town car, I said, and maybe you'll crack the case. He was not amused. Eventually, Rudolph's trail turned north and the FBI moved away from Mountain Crossings. Until that dog arrives. Today I walk out of the house and into the breezeway with Sky by my side and hear Billy hollering in the backyard. "Give me that! Give it to me!" Billy is leaning against the stone wall about 20 feet from the breezeway and playing what appears to be a friendly game of tug-of-war with an old hound that keeps a firm grip with its jaws on an old leather boot. Sky, who has always found certain dog behaviours beneath her, sighs and goes to find a place to sit. She stations herself a few paces away, close enough to protect us if the hound should turn violent, far enough away to show the hound that she will not play any game that involves tugging at something with her mouth. I've never seen this hound before, and I wasn't expecting to see Billy. I tell him I thought he was out hiking. "I got back this morning. Camped a mile back at Bull Gap last night," he said quickly. "Would you mind giving me a hand here?" "I hope you didn't drag that dog back with you. If you did, here's your problem. That will be the 3rd in a month. Don't tell me you fed him." "I didn't feed him. Now would you shut up and help me get this damn boot out of his mouth?" Billy shouts, jerking at the boot. The old hound digs in and pulls all his weight back on his haunches, flattening his back and growling happily. "What do you want me to do exactly? Goose him?" "Why not? Give it a try, but do something." I say, "Release." The dog immediately releases the boot into Billy's hand, causing him to fall against the stone wall. "Well, that wasn't so bad," he chuckles. It's a coon dog or squirrel dog. It's trained to sniff 'em, kill 'em and bring 'em back to the pickup truck or something. "What are you going to do with this dog?" "Look at this boot." "Yeah, it's an old Wolverine work boot. I don't want it." "No," Billy says, "look at this boot. There's a foot still in it." I look over and Billy turns the boot toward me so I can see inside. In a mess of dry leaves and dirt, I make out what can only be bones. "Damn, Billy, where do you think he found it?" "I don't know. I spent the night at Bull Gap. The dog showed up there last night, but he didn't have a boot in his mouth. He showed up again about 30 minutes ago as I was putting him on my pack and had this damn boot, and he hasn't let it out of his mouth since." Bumblefoot. I know you can walk these woods with your eyes closed. Why don't you try it sometime? Don't you know dead people in the woods is bad for business? Tell that to the dog, Winton, he says. I told him I had a feeling that it didn't belong to him. Billy carries the boot up to the balcony and carefully lays it on one of the picnic tables. He pauses a moment and takes a bashful look around, then sits down at the table, slouching so as to stare at the boot eye to eye. He looks as if he wants to ask it a question. I bring a cordless phone from the shop out to the balcony and dial 911. What's your emergency, please? We found a boot on the trail, I say. No, that's not it. I mean, we found this boot. Sir, I wouldn't consider that an emergency. No, listen, we found a boot with a foot in it. Sir, I'm wearing a boot with a foot in it right now. Sir, do you realise that it's a crime to prank call it? We found a boot with a foot in it and nothing else in it. Not even the whole foot, Billy says. Just the bones. Not even a foot, just the bones, I say. Who is this? Sir, what is your name? This is Winton, owner of Mountain Crossings, and I have found, or rather a dog brought to me, a boot with the skeleton of a human foot still in the damn thing. Do you know who it belongs to, sir? No, ma'am, I do not. Do you know anybody who's missing one? We'll send an officer up. After about 20 minutes, a sheriff's car pulls into the parking lot. A young officer leaps out with a clipboard in hand. He's a short and skinny man who has to make the most of what he's got. For height, he holds himself up as straight as he can. For bulk, he's got a Kevlar vest and a belt buckle the size of a license plate. But an extraordinary amount of him is moustache. We greet Officer Moustache at the top of the stairs and take him to the boot. The boot's over there, Billy says importantly, like a secretary showing us into the boss's office. The boot sits up on the picnic table, looking impressive and heavy. Officer Moustache gives the boot some room while he examines it. He's careful not to touch it with his hands. He has to belly up to the picnic table and lean over, all 5'5" of him, as far as he can, to see inside. Then, after he has picked and poked at the boot with his pen for a few minutes, tilting it up, then letting it settle, listening to the chalky rattle of the contents, he proclaims, Yep, I think you're right. That looks like a boot with a foot stuck in there. Let me make a call, and I'll be right back to get some more information. Don't let anybody touch that boot. Billy moves over to the boot and calls out, Sir, does that mean you just deputised me? Come on, Deputy Bumblefoot, I say. This is serious. Billy and I stand around counting minutes, looking at the boot every now and then, making sure it's comfortable, waiting for the officer to return. The boot sits quietly a little while, and then it starts whispering to us, working on us, reminding us of what it really is, a vessel containing pieces of a dead man. Not knowing who the dead man was, we'd found it easy at first to make the boot into a prop, a gag. Now the same ignorance makes us feel irresponsible and shabby. You have to know somebody and be his friend to have the right to tease him. We don't know who's in that boot. Billy goes into the store and brings out 2 coffees and 1 Snickers bar. We talk to break up the tension. You didn't bring me a Snickers? I thought you were a vegetarian, he says through a sticky mouthful. Officer Moustache returns and takes another look at the boot. Didn't one of you find a body over at Gerard Gap a few months ago? Yes, that would be me, sir, I tell him. I found the campsite, looked for the person, but you guys found the body. His name was Earthworm. Earthworm? I don't know his real name. It had been 6 months before. I was on a 10-mile run from Woody Gap and came across a campsite about 5 miles in at Gerard Gap. I was going to pass by, but I noticed that the rainfly was not on the tent. It had been raining for the past 12 hours. I stopped and discovered a tent full of water, a soaked sleeping bag, an unopened pack of cigarettes, and a Bible with Earthworm penned inside. I recognised the name of a thin, gawky man who came through the store 2 or 3 times a year. He had signed the guest book in the same childish scrawl. He was called Earthworm for his skinny, wormy build. I remembered that he was a drinker, but never a violent one. He told us that he was carrying the Bible because he wanted to learn more about it. Figure I'll give just about all the religions a chance, then pick out the one that works for me, he said. I'm starting with the Bible because it's the easiest one to find in English. That was the extent of Earthworm's proselytizing. We had seen him at the store, alive and bizarre, less than a week before I came across his campsite. His food bag was strangely hung about 4 feet from the ground, and his Jan Sport exterior frame pack was leaning against a tree. I rummaged through the pack and found a Home Depot receipt, a cell phone, a half-empty bottle of vodka and Percodan. I looked around the perimeter and called out for Earthworm for about 15 minutes. I couldn't get a cell signal there, but I knew I could get one on top of Blood Mountain, so I kept running. At the top of the mountain, I called the store. In the end, Earthworm was found. He had fallen 30 feet from a tree and landed on his head. No one could figure out why he had been in the tree. He wasn't a hunter, and he had been known to enjoy his alcohol and painkillers just as much on solid ground as anywhere else. We missed Earthworm and the erratic chatter he brought to the store. He was one of those strange characters you couldn't help but like. At Mountain Crossings, we had a high tolerance for strange. Officer Moustache leads Billy aside with his notepad and pen and questions him for the next 10 minutes. Billy repeats the story he told me at the back of the breezeway. Within an hour, the parking lot is filling up with the sheriff, more deputies, rescue teams, marked and unmarked police cars. Then the men in the black cars, the black sunglasses, the black suits start showing up. One group of them strips out of their suits right there in the lot, changing into nylon pants, black combat boots and jungle vests with large yellow letters embroidered on the back, GBI, for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Billy, do you have any idea why the GBI are here? Not a clue, and the FBI just poured in. Lawmen kept coming in. They get out of their cars and stand around in small groups grumbling secretly, holding their hands over their mouths like baseball players congregating on the pitching mound. No one says a word to us during this muster, so we do our best to open the store and do some business. The boot now has an appointed armed guard. The picnic table gets cordoned off with yellow crime scene tape. After about half an hour, we see Officer Moustache talking on the stairs with a man in an FBI battle vest. The officer looks up and points his finger in our direction. He introduces me and Billy, and Mr. FBI reaches out and shakes our hands. The agent asks Billy, "You think you can get that dog of yours to follow you back into the woods to the place where you stayed last night?" "It's not my dog," Billy says with an air of indignation. "Though I did have an old hound a long time ago, and come to think of it, he was always carrying off people's shoes." "Billy, do you think you can get that dog, whoever the hell's dog that is, to go back to where your campsite was last night?" says Mr. FBI. "Yes, sir. Let me grab a leash and get some more beef jerky." I glare at Billy and try to catch him directly in the eye so he can read my thoughts. "You told me you didn't feed the dog." The FBI agent pulls Billy to one side and talks with him in private. They spend a few minutes together, and then Billy steps into the shop to grab a leash from the shelf and some beef jerky. "I have some beef jerky and 2 Snickers bars," he says. "You'll have to put it on my tab. I'm a deputy today." "Come on, Billy, what are they looking for?" "Rudolph. They think it could be Rudolph. They're hoping this boot is the biggest thing left of him." "Damn, I forgot about that guy. Of course." "Gotta run. Rover and I are going for a hike," Billy says, whistling to his new 4-footed companion. "See you in a few hours." A team of 8 heads out through the breezeway and up the trail, with Billy and the dog leading the way. As they're leaving, Buddy's burgundy Chevy Astro van goes crawling through the lot, looking for a space in the sea of government vehicles which are parked in various cockeyed directions. It makes sense to me when you think about it. If you work for the FBI, you can park as badly as you want to. After a few minutes, Buddy gives up and simply stops in the middle of the lot, jams into park and steps out of the car yelling to no one in particular, "You people, didn't your daddy teach you how to park?" A few officers turn their heads, but no one is really listening. "What the hell is going on?" Buddy asks me when he gets inside. "No one out there would even talk to me." This morning, a dog brought us a boot with skeletal remains of a foot still in it, and they think it may be Rudolph. "A dog? A boot with a—" "Yes, it's a long story. Billy's out with them now at Bull Gap, trying to help them find the rest of the guy." "Bull Gap? That's not Rudolph. It's Hobbs." I draw a blank. "Hobbs?" "Hobbs," Buddy says. "Remember? That abandoned campsite that Nate found up there a couple of years ago." "Yes, of course, that was just before my time, I say. But yeah, I heard you guys talking about it so many times. They never found a body." "We had 2 Polaroids of the guy," Buddy says. "One was a group shot with other hikers, another was a headshot that we put in the Through Hiker album. The police took one of them, plus about 80 pounds of camping gear that Nate dragged out of the woods." I asked Buddy, "You think you can find that other photo?" "I know exactly where it is. I'll grab it for you." The whole Hobbs episode was 2 winters earlier, just before I bought the store. I knew the story well, though, because Nate had been telling it for some time as a spook story, the tale of the abandoned campsite. I'd actually seen Hobbs' campsite once before and ignored it, Nate would say, as we sat around a fire. Everything looked normal. Then I go past it again a week later. It doesn't look so normal anymore. When Nate checked inside the tent, he found a wet sleeping bag, a journal, 2 books and some trash that looked as if it had been dragged in by small animals. When Nate reported the find to the sheriff's office, he learned that the sheriff had no missing person report for a hiker. The officers asked him to gather the equipment in plastic bags. They would come and pick it up a few days later. Hobbs was packing cheap gear. You know, it's not uncommon for people to abandon cheap gear on the trail, Nate said. And his journal was full of stuff about demons circling my head and people's voices in the air all the time. We concluded that the guy's hearing voices. He freaked out. One of the voices in his head ordered him to walk off the trail and leave everything behind. The store keeps photographs and logbooks of hikers passing through. The logbooks go back 20 years. After the Polaroid of Hobbs was given to law enforcement, it took a few more weeks and a couple of phone calls to the sheriff's department to get the deputies to pick up the gear. Dorothy Hanson, the owner of Mountain Crossings at that time, located a sister of Hobbs in Philadelphia. The sister said she didn't know or much care where Hobbs was and that no one in the family was looking for him. He goes out all the time and we have no idea where he's going. He does this all the time. How can you be missing if no one's looking for you? 2 months after that, the sister called the sheriff to see if Hobbs had shown up. He hadn't. A missing person report was filed. No one had come forward with any news about Hobbs in all that time, until the dog, today. Outside, several officers are still in the parking lot, leaning against cars, writing in notebooks and talking on cell phones. The guardian of the boot is still perched on the balcony with the dead man's foot. Officer Moustache is climbing the stairs and headed my way. Buddy steps outside with Polaroid in hand and says to me, "Here you go, boss. That's him in the middle." "Officer, I think this is the man you're looking for," I say. "We call him Hobbs, and down at the station, tucked away in some box with some old camping equipment, you should have a headshot of the guy. The folks who owned this place before me gave it to you about 2 years ago. See his feet? There's the old tan Wolverine boots, sir." Glancing at the photograph as I hand it over, I feel as though I'm seeing it for the first time. This man Hobbs was a ghost once. He's very real to me now. There he is, the man in the boot, mid-40s, lanky, clean-shaven, bald but letting his curly hair grow wild at the back and sides for compensation perhaps. Round wire frames behind which his eyes seem to be retreating, getting hollower every year. A solitary, intellectual man, carrying a sadness with him, as old as he'll ever be. Seeing the Polaroid takes the wind out of the officer's sails. His shoulders drop as he studies the picture. He doesn't say anything, simply turns and walks away, still staring at the photograph in his hand as he takes it down to the officers in the parking lot. I watch as the scrawny young deputy shows the picture to his commander in the parking lot. A circle of officers begins to form around the photograph. Their reactions to the photo are the same. Shoulders dropped, hands thrown up, feet stamped. A few of them look down at their guns with sadness. They've been hoping to shoot someone today. Most of the FBI and GBI depart within an hour of the appearance of Buddy's Polaroid, leaving only the local police and rescue. By evening, the ordeal is coming to a close. Billy is back and has resumed his seat on the roof with his flute. Buddy is back at the register. The word is out as to why every cop in Union County has been in our parking lot, and even the hikers who smell most conspicuously of marijuana are beginning to relax. I'm trying to help a woman with some infected blisters when Officer Moustache comes back for a last word. "Excuse me, Mr. Porter. Can I speak to you for a moment?" His tone is more subdued than before, and he lets his southern accent come through more warmly now. He explains that they found scraps of a shirt matching the colour of the shirt Hobbs wears in the picture. "More bones, too," he says, "all over the place. The coyotes and bears have scattered him all over the forest. You could have people bringing in parts of Hobbs for years. Just bag 'em up, give us a call, and we'll come and get 'em." Given the time of year that Nate found the Hobbs campsite, we concluded that he was a victim of hypothermia. The journal provided some clues to his state of mind, which could have exacerbated the early symptoms of the condition. Most of his remains were found on a hillside near the water source at Bull Gap, less than 300 yards from his campsite. We supposed that he wandered into the woods to get water and became disoriented. Then he just laid himself down on the side of the hill and went to sleep. 2 years later, and still no one is looking for him. In late 2003, some 2.5 years after the Hobbs episode, a 21-year-old policeman on a routine patrol saw what he mistook for a burglar scavenging a garbage bin behind a discount supermarket in Murphy, North Carolina, and that was the end of the search for Eric Robert Rudolph. He was arrested and has been serving consecutive life terms since his sentencing. The old hound never looked for nor found any more of Hobbs, but he did strike up a friendship during his walk to Bull Gap with a young sheriff's deputy who adopted him that very day.